Growing up in Auckland, in a rugby-mad household, singing was never one of the options for Moses. But because his passion spoke louder than he could sing, it just happened.
He came out with his school choir and you could have heard a pin drop. Thousands of school children filling the town hall, and this young man held the stage in a way that still to this day resonates as a memory.
It was always music, writing it, singing it, acting. That is very much him as a child.
He came to me when he was 17. He was already understanding what to do with the musical notes on the page, just really committed to the artistry of music in a way that is unusual for his age.
He studied his bachelor's here, then was hand-selected for the Wales International Academy of Voice. We needed to fundraise to make those studies happen overseas, so we created this group called SOL3 MIO.
The first tour going around little tiny venues, and then the third tour we finished up in the hugest arenas in the country.
It's just been a wild ride. His debut album, Grace, which he wrote, is very personal. It's a slice of home, it's a slice of him, it's a slice of our family, all put into music.
He's really normalized classical music. He's taken the elitism out of it. But he also opens up viable pathways for all singers to have a career that is diverse and interesting.
He's a seeker. He's never content with being told that this is the way that it's always been done. That's somewhere Moses is exploring now, how film and literature and art are all ultimately interlinked.
His storytelling is particularly authentic. It is about his voice, but it's about him as a person. He has X factor, for sure.
When Moses sings, there's something about his voice that doesn't just go into your ears, it goes into your soul.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, distinguished alumnus Moses Mackay cannot join us in person tonight. Instead, he'll beam in from Milan in Italy to talk with Jack. Matthias Mackay, Moses' brother, will accept the award on his behalf. Presenting the medallion is Bella Allen Moitoa, a classical mezzo-soprano studying for a Bachelor of Arts in Education and a Bachelor of Music and Classical Voice. Bella is an experienced choral and solo performer. She won first place under 21 at the 2025 Rotorua New Zealand Aria competition. Please welcome Bella and Matthias Mackay.
Malo lavo uso oame oi.
Malo, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh my God, I feel very emotional watching that. That was I didn't expect to see that video. I felt full of emotions. So thank you.
We're feeling full of emotions. Anytime they say Moses can't be here because he's in Milan, everyone's going, oh, okay, well, here we go. Hey, I had not appreciated this about you, Moses, but you were born with poor hearing. How does a boy who is born with poor hearing go on to become an internationally celebrated musician?
I think when you're born with something that is, I guess, seen as a disability for a lot of people, for me, it became my little thing, my little secret. And I think for me, it became a thing that I would lean more into. And sounds, some people hear music. I hear sounds. I hear very intricate sounds. So I'm very sensitive to things. And so for me, it was never a disability. It became a thing that I was able to use to listen to people. Not what they say, but listen to what people's energy, I suppose you could say, on a very level.
In a musical sense, how did you work with that? I mean, you said you were 9 or 10 years old before your hearing began to improve in an environment where you were surrounded by music and surrounded by singing. So were you off key? How did that work?
I was raised in a family where everyone sung. It was a part of our culture. Brothers sung, cousins sung, uncles, aunties, everyone's singing. And so for me, one of the best memories I have growing up was being in a room of my entire family singing. And there was just a vibration that was around. And for me, it was at that point, I didn't have hearing disabilities. At that point, I was very much like everyone else. So in terms of music, going into my teenage years and leaning into that, it became more interesting because when I went to study and I went to sing with the New Zealand Youth Choir, I started meeting people who also had this fascination for music. I suppose that's what you could say New Zealand, the University of Auckland was for me. It was like a meeting ground of like-minded people who are also music geeks.
Yeah. You found your tribe. I think that story and experience has been repeated so many times over the years. And it's funny, though, how those little moments come to define us. I think you were 18 when Andrea Bocelli sang here. You were in the backing choir supporting him at the time. Do you remember what he sung, and do you remember how it made you feel?
I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 18 years old, and I was one of the youngsters sitting in the choir, and there was one song called Canto della Terra, which translates into the Song of the Earth. And it was a magnificent moment where it was me, a full orchestra, and then this one man standing in front singing the song. And I remember standing there with the music. I was meant to sing. I couldn't sing. I had lost my voice. I was so moved by this moment that I remember getting to the end of that song. It was in Victor Arena, which is now Spark Arena. And I turned to the guy next to me, and I said to him, one day I want to do what he's doing. And then it was a few years later where SOL3 MIO sold out Spark Arena. So it was a crazy, crazy whirlwind moment.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. You, Penny, and Amatai started SOL3 MIO essentially as a fundraiser. You hired a school hall. It was half full. You were trying to raise money to go to Wales to study at the time, and within months you were selling out the Auckland Town Hall, you were signing to Universal Music, you were at Vector or Spark or whatever it's called, selling out stadiums. What was that feeling when something built almost accidentally starts to take on a life of its own?
That was a funny time. I was so young, and looking back to that moment, it felt really right, and it wasn't just about the music, it wasn't just about the fundraising, but we were lifting a culture. We were changing the culture of classical music, and we were bringing in a new wave of Polynesian singers and a new wave of Polynesian voices. And so for us, it felt so fresh. We felt like we were the front line of busting down some walls that needed to be busted down. And so it's so humbling for me now to see the next generation, a decade on, a whole wave of young singers coming through. For me, it just reminds me that there was a reason for everything. And for us, that moment was to be the trailblazers for something really special. So I'm very humbled, and I really understand my position in the flux of it all.
Do you ever reflect that perhaps that same feeling you had watching Andrea Bocelli is the feeling that other young Pacific singers have looking at Moses Mackay?
Totally, and I get pictures from people sending me images of them watching me on the TV from a recording 10 years ago. And to this day, I still get it. And it's very humbling. I feel very blessed to be in the position where I see myself in so many other people coming through. And I guess that's the great beauty of it all. And being an artist is that you are just mirroring so many different things. I'm seeing myself in other people ahead of me, but I'm also seeing myself in a lot of people following me. So it's a beautiful position to be in.
You've been in one of the most successful musical acts this country has ever produced, the highest selling album in New Zealand 2 years running, multi-platinum, sold out tours. You could have stayed in that lane forever. But in 2023, you released Grace, your debut solo album, original songs written by you, profoundly personal. It went straight to #1 in New Zealand on debut. Why did you do that? What was the thing in you that wanted to follow that path?
You know, I'm a real firm believer that I just want to get to the end, and I don't want it to sound like, heavy, but I really want to get to the end and look back and go, I did everything. I did everything that I wanted to do and I set out to do, and I did it. And there was music that was just sitting on my heart that needed to get out. And it was music that I started writing when I was 15, 16, 17, real old stuff that I really wanted the world to hear. And one of the first songs that I had written was a song called Grace. And it was a dedication to my grandmother, Malia, who came from the islands of Samoa and came down to New Zealand for a better life. She had taken that big voyage, which back in the day, it was a big thing. And she started a life in New Zealand. And so I am the descendant of that journey. And now it's so funny for me sitting here in Italy, because I'm really just taking that flag. I'm really doing her work. I'm carrying on her legacy of being that traveler, the voyager. And so it's very important for me to do things that are aligned to my heart, that are close to my heart, like releasing Grace. And so it happened, it went out, and I'm very proud of that, and on to the next.
It's interesting. I looked up the process for Grace, and after your grandma died, your hearing dramatically improved as a young boy. And you've said that you believe in a way it was her parting gift to you. You had been so close to her in your formative years. So how do you make sense of something like that?
Jack, some things in life you just can't make sense of. And for me at that young age, there was such beauty and innocence around it that it wasn't even a thing. I didn't want to intellectualize it. I didn't understand it, but I just knew that when my nana got diagnosed with cancer, we were very close. She was almost like a second mother to me. She really, really raised me. And when she got cancer and died, and it was on her deathbed, I remember running and showing her my new hearing aids. I said, look at these hearing aids, the new colors. And the following week, when I had to go get checked up because something was wrong, the audiologist literally sat me down. He said, you have 100% hearing. And I have no way to explain that. And I looked at him in his eye and I said, my nana gave it to me before she died. And there was conviction in a little kid of 10 years old saying that. There was conviction in that. And I don't know, you don't have to be spiritual, you don't have to, whatever. But for me, that was what happened. And so, yeah, like I said, I carry that legacy with me every day. It's a blessing that I can hear you.
Yeah. You've said you today.
Now I have. I said, now I have selective vision, which is a whole other thing.
You've said today, Moses, that having been born in New Zealand, educated at the University of Auckland, living in Milan, you are, quote, living your grandparents' wildest dreams. How so?
Wow. The fact that I'm here, there's a beauty of being here on the other side of the world. I feel very like I am carrying on that legacy, but at the same time, I have to admit, there is a loneliness that comes with that. Being the first of, and I just pray and I hope that the next generation, I hope my family, my young nieces and nephews, that they are able to also follow these footsteps. I am my grandparents' dreams because they had dreams of traveling and seeing the world and taking their culture to the world. I mean, you probably see there's a big tapa clock behind me that was gifted to me that comes from the islands of Samoa. This bark right here, this piece of home, this little piece of home. And for me, this is, it's very special.
Moses, we very much appreciate you joining us from across the oceans. We know there's probably a cappuccino, a little pastry waiting for you somewhere nice, a little al fresco number somewhere, but please join me in congratulating Moses Mackay.